Next is about the Dravyasangrahaneeya Adhyayam Vyakhyasyaamahe Thovacha Bhagavantanantri. Now this chapter is about the collection of medicines in the Samhita. It's a very huge issue, big issue, and there is a lot of controversy also. Now, Sushruta has classified the dravyas, the almost all the medicinal plants which are used in the whole Samhita throughout. Almost, no, it's not that it's complete, but more than 90% of the drugs which are used in the which are mentioned in the Samhita in any other chapter, they are referred to in this chapter, and they are classified into groups, and Sushruta has classified them into Saptatrimshat, 37 Ganaha, Samasena Saptatrimshat Dravya Ganaha Bhavanti. The classification is into 37 categories, and these 37 categories are named based upon the first name of the group plant which is used named in there, listed in that category, and the grouping is based upon the dosha gnata, the effect on the dosha, as well as the impact on the disease. Now, from Charaka Samhita, the concept of that Gana itself is a very classical concept. Charaka Samhita has mentioned the Ganas as a Panchashat Mahakashayaha, 50 Mahakashaya, and they are named based upon their functionality like Jivaniya, Brahmaniya, Lekaniya, etc., depending upon the activity as such. And the last one is a Shamaharaha, Jwaraharaha, Shamahara, is a Panchaka Kashaya Varga. So there are the 50 varieties of these Kashaya Varga, which are categorized again into the either a group of 6 or group of 5. Jivaniya, Brahmaniya, Lekaniya, Bhedaniya, Sudaniya, Deepaniya, it is Shatkah Kashaya Varga, the group of 6 as such. Balyo Varna Kantya Hrudya Chatushkah Kashaya Varga is a group of 4. So this way, in total, it's about the Panchashat Mahakashayaha. 50 Mahakashayas are mentioned. And the again, they could be again categorized into Dasha Imani. In the Dasha Imani group, you will have the 10 of these Mahakashayas again categorized based upon their functionality. So Charaka classification of medicines is again based upon the functionality, but the approach is slightly different from what Sushruta has mentioned. That's not a controversy. Now, the major issue, controversy, is about the identification of the real plants. Now, naming of the plants in Ayurvedic texts, as such, starting Charaka up to the level of Nighantu, is based upon either the shape or certain other characters of the plants. Like as Charaka Samhita mentioned about the descriptions, Brahmaswarchala Nama Aushadhiya, Hiranyakshira, Pushkara Sadasha a plant which has a latex which which looks like yellowish or golden yellow colored latex, and has a leaf which looks like that of the lotus, is called as Brahmaswarchala. Or the name also could be based upon the other characters. Aditya Parni Namaushari Suryakanta, a plant which follows the movement of the sun in the daytime, like moving towards the sun, or it could be like the real flower of that could be like a Surya Mandala Kara Pushpa. The flower could be looking like that of Surya Mandala, so on. So the name Kashta Godhanam Aushani Godhakaraha, a plant, the leaf of which has a shape of the lizard, is a Godha, Kashta Godha. Sarpa Nam Aushani Sarpakaraha, a plant which has some structure which resembles that of a snake, is called a sarpa, somo, etc. The name is given based upon their shapes. Now, this culture of naming based upon the shapes of plants or leaves or maybe the flowers or maybe the roots is one of the important character as such, but at the same time it also can produce some confusion. Confusion because the same name is used for multiple plants at times, and at the context, in that specific context, which is the real plant to be used, is another major issue which always is a source of confusion, and hence it has resulted in a group of drugs which you call as controversial drugs. Now, to identify the real drugs, what Charaka as well as Sushruta has suggested is you have to get the help of the natives, the people who live in the a forest like औषधीः नामरूपाभ्यां जानते हि अजपाः वने अविपाश्चैव गोपाश्च ये चान्ये वनवासिनः न नामज्ञानमात्रेण रूपज्ञानेन वा पुनः औषधीनां परं प्राप्तिं कश्चित् वेदितुमर्हति योगवित् अपि स्वरूपज्ञः स्वरूपज्ञः तासां तत्त्वविसुच्यते किंबदर्यो बिजानीयात् औषधीः सर्वताभिषक्. Now, identification of the plant itself was a major issue even during the period of Charaka Samhita. And for identification of the plant based upon their shape as well as the name, Charaka Samhita advises to take the help of the folk people, or maybe the native people who are living in that area, those who have some idea of the name and the source of the plant as well as the characters of the plant. But a Vaidya, a physician, should know much more than simply the name and the shape. He also should know Yoga Vidya, how to use that medicine in the disease condition. So the source and the scope of this knowledge is quite huge, and the responsibility of identifying the proper plant as well as prescribing it in the right situation is the major burden on the physician. Yogamasam to yo vidyat deshak alopapatitam purusham viksha sajneyaha bhishagutamaha. So prescription of the drug would be based upon the individual characters and the individual features of the disease. So the whole prescription practice in Sushrutas Charaka or Sushrutas period was something different from what we see now. In Sushruta period, the moment the patient is seen, the physician had to search for the drugs. Now, to facilitate the physician to search for the drugs, the idea of Gana and the groups are mentioned. Like, suppose you have a patient with certain disease, and if you know about the group of the drugs which could be used in that particular disease, depending upon the availability, geographical reasons or factors, as well as the environmental factors, seasonal factors, which can make that drug available, or at times the drug may not be available. You will have to select a group of maybe whatever the drug is available, and that drug has to be prescribed to the patient. And again, selection also will be based upon the dosha dusha kala, which we have already discussed about the different variables of the patient condition, and hence that suggestion of a grouping of the drug is a practical proposal in that period of practice. Whereas now, the present situation, we have ready-made drugs in the pharmacy, and the responsibility of preparing the medicine is almost attributed to a separate discipline. Responsibility of prescribing the medicine is a separate factor. So there is a gap formed as such. Yeah, of course, there is advantage and disadvantage of both aspects in this kind of practice, but that's an issue of big debate, so we'll not go into that issue. Now, coming back to the basic issue of identification of the plant. Even now, the contemporary biology also, the identification of the plant is based upon the features like the shape of the leaf, shape of the flower, shape of the roots, etc. Based upon the plants are identified and they are named. There is a standard naming, the what we call as the botanical name, which is universally accepted. That universal acceptance of a botanical name gives you some edge where a proper identification of the plant anytime is possible. And of course, lot of technology also now is used. Like if you have an image of a plant leaf or a flower, with the software, there are lots of many developed softwares which are developed as such, which are available, by which you can identify the plant comparatively more accurately than what Sushruta Charaka has said. Sushruta Charaka had to depend upon the folklore practitioners to identify the plant, whereas now you have some apps or maybe softwares by which the identification of the plant with the standard botanical name is possible. So once you have a clear-cut identification of the plant, getting the plant may not be as troublesome as Sushruta or Charaka have faced in the present day situation. But still, you have a real problem of the controversies. Controversies because of the different resources, names of the plants. The names of the certain plants which are mentioned in Charaka, they are mentioned differently in Sushruta. And many times you will have to depend upon the commentators. Commentators may have given some guideline, and these guidelines are totally different from what you get from the Nikhandus. And fortunately or unfortunately, the number of Nikhandus is quite huge. You have more than 20 or 25 Nikhandus available, and most of these Nikhandus may not have a uniform opinion about a specific plant. So it's quite difficult to make out exactly like which is the real plant, which is the target at that context. Now, so what we have done, what I have done during this session now, it's a very huge session now, this chapter. I have made use of the resources of mainly Dhanvantari Nigantu and Kayadeva Nigantu, major two Nigantus which I have used. Of course, that results in certain controversies. At the same time, the other resources are used, which are available online for getting the images as well as certain information about these controversies of the plant are one is the Wisdom Library and the FRLH is and Easy Ayurveda, Live Ayurveda. These are the major resources from which I have collected some teaching material, study material about the plants. Then very interesting issue, another issue which we have to be aware of is Ayush Ministry has established a board, a National Medicinal Plants Board, uh, which is supposed to take up this responsibility of fixing this identity of the plants as well as making them available. But I would not comment on that activity. All that I can say is that there is much to be done, and from the academic point of view, there is very little source, little help which you can get from this resource of National Medicinal Plant Board now as it is present now. Of course, this board was established in 2000, and in 22 years, there is some progress in the commercial side of making the medicinal plants available. But as far as the academic resource and academic the either finalizing the identity of the drugs, the achievement from this board is not very satisfactory. That's all the maximum comment. So with this, we'll directly get into the topic. The among those groups which are mentioned, 37 group gadas mentioned in Sushruta, the first of them is Vidari Gandhadi Gana. In the Vidari Gandhadi Gana, there are 20 drugs, and they are Vidari Gandha, Vidari, Vishwadeva, Sahadeva, Shwadamstra, Prithakparni, Shatavari, Sariva, Krishna Sariva, Jivata Rishabhata, and Mahasaha, Kshudrasaha, Brihatyo, Brihati, two Brihatis, Punarnama, Yeranda, Hamsapadi, Vrishtikali, Vrishabhi. These are the 20 drugs. And this Gana, Bidari Gandhadihi Ayam, Ganaha, Pitta Anilapaha is used for Pittaja and Vataja Vyadhi, and particularly where there is a Avarana, Pitta Avarana Lakshanas. The reasons I would say, like when we go into that further discussion, I would say suggest about certain more of these issues. Shosha, Gulma, Angamarta, Urdhva Kasa Vinashana. It also can be used in the treatment of the diseases like Shosha, cachexic disorders, Gulma, Angamarta, Urdhva Kasa. Now, these diseases, Shosha, Gulma, Angamarta, presenting with either Pittaja or Vataja Lakshana, or where you have a Avarana, Pitta Avarana Lakshanas, selection of these drugs is possible. Now, we will go into individual drugs as well. Now, of course, the amount of the details which you can study about the individual drug could be quite huge, but I would like to limit it to the minimum required. Like minimum required information about the drug is, of course, the identification of the drug and at least the guna, rasa guna of the drug from authentic sources of the Nighantu, and maybe at least the information in Brihat Samhita, Brihat rates like Taraka and Sushra, at least. Vagbhata, of course, also is possible. So I would like limit to this. The further description, like what are the researchers done, what are the alkaloids studied, and so on, you may get the resources in the internet freely. So I would not go into that level of the study. But of course, another information which could be really useful is which are the yogas where these drugs are used, which I have not really added in the present discussion. Now, first is the Vidari Gandha. The Vidari Gandha, according to Dallana, is Shalapardi or Vidari or Vipadika Kandaha. The other name given to the Vidari Gandha is Shalapardi. And Dhanvantari Nigantu, the Vidari Gandha has the different names, the synonyms of Vidari Gandha are Shaliparni, Stira, Saumya, Triparni, Adikuha, Dhruva, Vidari Gandha, Amshimati, Dirgha Mula, Amsuputrika. These are the synonyms of the Vidari Gandha. The Rasapune Birya Vipaka, Bidari Shaliparni is known to have Tikta Rasa and Guru Guna and Ushna Virya, and specifically is used in Vata Dosha. So because of the Guru Guna and Ushna Virya, as very interestingly, Tikta Rasa in general is suggested as per the protocol, general protocol. Tikta Rasa is not suggested in a Vata Vyadhi, it can consider as a Vatakara. But because of the Guru Guna and Ushna Guna, it's a Vatahara. So rather, in a patient who has an aggravation of the Laghu Guna and Shita Guna of Vata, Shaliparni is better. And one of the common issue which we see due to the aggravation of the Shita and the Lagukuna of Vata is the common cold, Jara, fever, etc. So, from that point of view, Shaliparni is prescribed in Vishama Jara, in the Jara conditions, particularly where you have the this non-periodic or periodic nature of the fever, and Mehagni in the Prameha again Vata Kapaja Prameha or Vataja Prameha or Vata Kapaja Prameha or Shofa Vata Vinashini, Vataja Shofa. These are the conditions where the Bidari Gandha could be prescribed. In Charaka Samhita, the Bidari Gandha is included in Angamarga Prashamana Gana, Shodhara Gana or Sandhaniya Gana, the other properties of the Bidari Gandha as such. Then the next is the Bidari. Bidari is a Pileria tuberosa as per the resources. The current botanical name, the other name is botanical name given. And according to Dhalana, the other names or suggestion is Bidari is Vibhagika Kandaha, Kohalakaraha, Lohita Kusmaha, Sajat Vividaha, Dirga Kando, Bhokshiraha, Sipako, Alpakshiraha iti. According to Dhalana, Bidari Kanda is having a root or a tuber, and there are two varieties. One is where the tuber is quite long and has more of latex, whereas the other is having a elongated tuber and it has a alpakshira, lesser latex content. Now, in the Nigantu, the Vidarika Mata Shukla Swadukanda Shrigarika, Dushakanda Vidarika, Vrishavali Vidarika. The Vidarikanda, the synonyms are Shukla, now the whitish color, based upon the color. Swadukanda, because the tubers are sweet, it's named as. Shrigarika, it has a shape resembles that of the head of a fox as such. Vrishakanda, it produces Vrishaguna and Vrishavalli, Vidalika. These are the synonyms as such. And the guna is it's a Shita guna, Vidali, Shishira, Swaduhu, Guruhu, Snigdha Samirajita. It's a Shita guna and it has a sweet taste, Madhura Rasa, and Guru guna and Snigdha guna. And it's also used in Vataja Vyadhi, Pitta Sajita. It also is used in Pitta Kapaja Vyadhi, Balya Vrishya Tiva Praketa. It's Balya and Vrishya, Rasayana as such. Now, the basic prescription would be when there is a Vata Vyadhi produced due to the aggravation of Laghu Guna and Ruksha Guna, and which results in emaciation. In that condition, it could be prescribed as such. Uh, So it's not that every Vata Vyadhi the Vidari Kanda can be prescribed. So you will have to dissect, identify that specific condition, and the drug has to be prescribed. That's all the basic issue. The third is the Vishwadeva, the Sida Veronicopolia. And Vishwadeva, according to Dhalana, is a Gangeriki, Gudashakkara, iti Purva Deshe. In eastern countries, it's named as Gudashakkara or Gulshakari. Anyata Sikapsumam Balamahu, even during the Dhalana period, there was a bit of confusion, controversy about the drug. in eastern portions it was named something different, and the western portions is named something different, and again some people would have a difference of opinion. But we can conclude is based upon certain of the resources of the Nigantu, and it could be like Gangeruki, Nagabala, Karadandinika, Jhasha, Vishwadeva, Tatha Arista, Khanda, Hrisogyaveduka, the Paryaya Padas, synonyms of the Vishwadeva are these as such. And the Guna are it's Madhura Amla Rasa, Kashaya Ushna, Madhura Amla Kashaya Rasas as such, and Ushna Guna and Guru Guna. Katuhu Tikta Vatagni. Again, it also has Katu Tikta Rasa and it's considered as a Vatagni, Vata Pitta Vikarajita. In case of Vata Pitta Vyadhi, it can be described. Sahadeva is Vernonius in area. Sahadeva is Bala Bheda. According to Dallar, it's a Bala Bheda, variation of Bala. Pita Pushpi Kankasi is loke. Anya Bala Nila Pushpamahu. Again, there is a bit of difference of opinion. Some would say like it's having a yellow color, and some say that it has a bluish color. Now, from the Nighanta resources, Mahabala, Vatyapushpi, Tatha Vatyayani Sutta, Sahadeva, Devasaha, Pita Pushpa, Brihat now, Sahadeva or Mahabala is having these synonyms. And it's used in Mahabala, the Hruddroga, Vata, Arsha, Shofa, Vinashini, Shukra, Vruddhikari, Hanyata, Vishamam, Jwaram, Nradam. It's used in the treatment of Hruddroga, Vata, Arshas, and Shofa, and it's also facilitating the Shukra Dhatu, and it also can be used in the Vishamadhara. It's also mentioned in Bhava Prakash in Gurutyadi Varga, Rajanighantu in Shatavariyadi Varga. Shogamstra is the Gokshura, very popular drug, which is used in many combinations and very popular drug. And it's the botanical name is Tribulus terrestris. गोक्षरस्य गोक्षरकः भक्षकः स्वादुकण्ठकः गोकण्ठको भक्षकः षडङ्गः कण्ठकत्रिकः गोकण्ठो गोक्षरकण्ठी षडङ्गः क्षुरकश्वरः त्रिकण्ठकः कण्ठफलः क्षुदंस्रः व्यानदंस्रकः. These are the different synonyms of gokshara. Now we will come across the same issue. Sushruta in the same chapter refers to the gokshara in other ganas. In the Veeratarvadi Gana and in the Laghu Panchamula is mentioned, and the names used in that context are different, not that of the Shodamstra. So, at times he uses the word Gokshara, at times he uses the word Sharangaha, and so on. So that makes the issue a bit more complicated when we go into the real study as such. Now, the guna of Gokshara is Shadamsraha, Brahmanaha, it's Brahmana guna, Vrishyaha, Tridosha Shamanaha, Agni Krita. It facilitates the Agni and it's a Vrishya and Brahmana. Shula Hridroga Kritsagnaha, Prameha Vidivartakaha, Goksharo Mutrakritsagnaha, Vrishyaha, Swaduhu, Samirajita, Shula Hridroga Shamanaha, Brahmanaha, Mehanashanaha. It's primarily it's used in the Mutrakritsha Vyadhi, and it's also facilitated in the Shula Hridroga conditions and Prameha in the Prameha also. Many of the Gokshara containing yogas are used in the same disorders. And Charaka, it's mentioned in the Gana of Dashamula Gana, Mutra Virechaniya, and Krimigna as such. Now, the next is a Prasakparni. The Prasakparni is Urelia Pitta. According to Dallana, Prasakparni is Prishtiparni or Prasakparni Pitani iti loke. The Prishtiparni, Prasakparni, Kalashi, Dhavani Guha, Ashtrikara Vinna, Anubhi, Bala, Parni, Kurostuka, Puchika. These are the different synonyms based upon the names as such. Murva, Madhurasa, Devi, Prasakparni, Triparni, Devashreni, Swadurasa. Now, the other synonyms, Murva, Madhurasa also. Again, that Murva word is used in many other plants. We will come across the same issues many times. So, we will have to understand them according to the context. That makes the issue more difficult as such. Now, the guna of Pithak Parni is a Swadurasa, Snigdha Parni Chamurata. It's a Swadurasa and Snigdha as such. And it's a Hridroga Kafavata Jita, Kusta Kandu, Vami, Meha, Vishamajwara Nashini. It's used in Vishamajwara, Kusta Kandu, etc. In Bhagavata, it's added in Haridradigada. Then the next is the Shatavari. Shatavari is aspirosis racemosus. Sorry, there is a spelling mistake. Racemosus. Shatavari Sukshmapatra Shatauri iti loke. According to Dalana, it's Sukshmapatra, the other name. Now, the from resources of the Nighantu, Shatavari, Shatapadi, Pivari, Indivari, Vari, Rishyaprokta, Dvipashatruhu, Dvipika, Urdhakantaka, the synonyms of the Shatavari in Nighantus. It has a property of Hima, Tikta, Rase, Swaduhu, Kshayasrajita, Vatapittahara, Avashya, Rasayana Varasmita. It has Shitavirya, Tikta Rasa, and Swadharasa also. And it's used in Dakshaya and Raktapitta conditions. Vatapitta conditions also are treated with the Shatavari. And according to Chanaka, it's included in the Gana of Balya Vayasthapana Madhuraskanda. In the Madhuraskanda, Shatavari is added in Charaka Samhita. In Sushruta, you will also have Pitta Shamaka group and Kantaka Panchamula groups also. Shatavari is indicated. The next is Sariva. Sariva is Hemidesmus indicus. Sariva, Jambupatra, Dugdhagarbi, Valli, Swanama Prasiddha. This is what Dhallana says about the other names. Now, the Nighanta resources Sariva, Sharada, Gopa, Gopavalli, Pratanika, Gopakanya, Lata, Aspota, Shvetokta, Kasta Sariva. This about the synonyms of Sariva. Now, in again, Dhanvantari Nighanta mentions about two varieties of Sariva. Sariva Anya Krishnamuli, Krishna Chandana Sariva, Bhadra Chandana Gopato Chandana Krishnavalyabi. There is two varieties. One Krishnamuli, where the roots are black in color, and the other is the common, where the color could be whitish or grayish as such. So again, you will have a problem like which of the Sariva has to be used in this context. Hemidesmus indicus is having a grayish colored root, not the black colored root. Now, the qualities of Sariva, both the Sariva, according to Nigantu, is Madhure Kapavata Sranashine. They are Madhurarasa and Kapha, Pitta, Rakta, Vyadhi, Hara. Kushta Kandu Jwara Hare, Meha Durgandhinashane. They are specifically used in Kushta as well as Kandu Jwara conditions. Now, Krishnamuli in Krishnamuli has to be Sangrahi Shishira Kapavata Jita. Krishna Aruchi Prashamani Raktapitahara Smita is used in the Krishna Aruchi etc. This Sarasaparila syrup, Sariva syrup is quite frequently available in the market as during summer season to reduce the impact of the heat as such. So maybe ideal is the Krishnamula Sariva has to be used in that context. In Charaka, Sariva is mentioned in Jwarahara Gana, Daha Prashamana Gana, Purisha Sangrahaniya, and Madhura Skanda as such. That's about the Sariva as a plant. Krishna Sariva also is mentioned in the same context, and the botanical name of the Krishna Sariva could be Ichnocarpus frutescens. Krishna Sariva, Chilahenta Patrasadasha Chada, Chandana Gandha, Kalavedi iti loke. Now, the same what we have discussed in the previous Dravya, the Krishna Sariva properties are already discussed, and the Krishna Aruchi Prashamani Raktapitta Harasmita. Then Jivaka is another of the drug, again controversial, highly controversial, like what is the real Jivaka plant. But most possibly it's a microstilus varici. And Jivaka Kuchishishaka Swaramukhyataha. The Paryapada of Jivaka is Jivaka Shungaka Shvekaha Dirghai Kuchishishaka Swangi Mathuraha Swaduhu Pranadaha Chidajivyapi. That Jivaniya Gana, the Dravyas of Jivaniya Gana, Shukra Sanjana Gana, or Sneha Gana, these are the Ganas where Charaka has added it. And the whole controversy is about drugs in the Jivaniya Gana. They are not really freely available, and whether they are really the same identified plants or not is again questionable. Lots of controversies are there. We will not go into the controversy. I would like to present the most accepted, generally accepted, rather, I would say generally accepted version. And the Jivaka microcelis is having Madhuraha, Shitaha, Raktapittanilanjayat, Daha Jwarakshayam, Hanti, Kapha Shukra Vivardhanaha. That's about the properties and uses as it. Rishabhaka, this Jivaka Rishabhaka, all the Jivaniya Ganas mentioned in Charaka. And the Rishabhaka, Ayamapi Snamakhata. According to Dollar, it's Snamakhata. It was very popular in that period, but now it's a highly less popular question mark, and again popularly believed as a Malaxis musculata. ऋषभः दुर्धरः धीरः मातृको वृषभवृषः विषाणी ककुदी इन्द्राक्षः बन्धुरो गोपतिस्तदा. These are the Paryanam synonyms of the Rishabhaka plant. It also has Raset Swaduhu, Pitta Rakta Samiraha. It's used in Pitta Javyadi, Rakta Javyadi, and Vata Javyadi. Kshayadaha Jaram Handi, Sleshma Shukra Vibardhanaha. It's a Shukrakara as such, Shukra Sanjanana as such, and it's one of that Jivaniya Dravya. Handi Dahasra Pittani, Kshaya Vata Jarehi Saha. Mahasaha, the another of the drug. Teramnus labialis. Mahasaha is Mashaparni. Mashaparni cha Kamboji, Krishna Vranta Mahasaha, Andra Masha, Simha Minna, Mamsa Masha, Ashwapuchika. These are the synonyms of Teramnus labialis. Mashaparni, Rase Tikta, Shitala, Rakta Pitta Jita, Kapalita Shukra Kari. Hanti Daha Jvaranulana is used in Daha Jvara Kapavitaja Vyadi, and it's also Shukra Sanjanana, and it's a Tikta Rasa Shita Virya as such. Charaka has added in Jivaniya, Shukra Sanjanana, and Madhuraskanda, the globes as such. Kshudra Saha is variety of the Mahasa, which is also named as Mudgaparni according to Dalana. It's a facial as a trilob as such. Mudgaparni, Kshudra Saha, Shimbi, Margaragantika, Vanaja, Ringini, Shutswa, Shubparni, Abrubhe Smute. These are the synonyms of the Mudgaparni as such. Now, the guna of Mudgavarni is Mudgavarni Hima Swaduhu Bhatarakta Vilashni Pitta Dvaha Jaran Hanti Krimi Gni Kappa Shukra Krita. It enhances the Shukra as well as Kappa, and mainly used in Vatarakta Vyadi, and used in Pitta Daha Jvara as such. Then Charaka has added in Jivaniya Gana, Shukra Sanjana Gana, and Madhura Skanda. Then Brihati Dvaya, the two Brihatis, Brihatyo Sukshmaphala Sthulaphala. According to Dalana, Brihatis are two varieties, where one is where the fruits are small and other is bigger. Now, Brihati Simhika Kanta Vata ki Rashti ki Kuli Vishada Sthulakanta ki Mahati cha Mahotika Simhika Kapabhatagni Shwasa Shula Jvarapaha. Now, according to Nigantu, there is not much of a difference in that Brihati. It's only one Brihati is mentioned, and the Parayana brothers of Brihati are the same, and most possibly the Brihati is a Salanam Indicum, which is the other Brihati, question mark. छर्ति हृद्रोग मंदाग्नि आमद औषांशना शेत बृहति ग्राहिणी सोष्णा वातग्नि पाचिनी तथा. It's grahi and it's used in छर्ति हृद्रोग and amadosha, as well as it's a vatagna vatashamaka. Then the other very popular drug where there is not much of a controversy is a Punarnava, Dorelia diffusa. Punarnava Vishakhascha Katilascha Shivatika Vrishchiraha Kshudra Varsha Bhu Varsha Bhu Kshudra Varsha Bhu Dirghapatraha Katilakaha. The other Paryapadas are the same, and the Guna of Punarnava is a Ushnamirya, Tiktarasa, Ruksha, Kapapaha. Sashofa Panduruga, Kasa, Urakshata Shulanata. In Charaka, it is added in Vayastapanagana, Kasa Haragana, Anvasanopaga, and Srigopaga Ganansa. Here and again a very popular drug, Lisinus communis, which according to Dhanu Nigantu, the Paryapada are Erandaha, Tarunaha, Shuklaha, Shvitraha, Chitraha, Gandharva Sakha, Panchamgula, Vardhamana, Amandaha, Dirgarandagaha. That's the Paryapada of Eranda, and according to Nigantu, Eranda could be of another variety, reddish variety, Raktaha Paraha. A red variety of Eranda also is mentioned in Samhita, but practically we depend upon only the dissonance communis as Eranda. Raktoha Aparaha, Hastaparnaha, Vyagraha, Vyagradalo Rubuhu, Rubukaha, Hastikarnija, Chinchuko Uttana Patrakaha. Now, which is a red variety, that part, that kind of an issue, more of study is not the focus of our discussion now. So I leave it as such. Just sensitizing that there is a bit of confusion, controversy as such. Now, Erandastu Rasetitah Swadu Ushno Anilanashana Udavarta Priha Gulma Basti Shulantra Vurdhinata Guru Vata Prashamana Vikaran Shonitan Jayat Palam Swadja Sakshuram Laghustam Bhedi Vatajita. Now, Eranda Mula and Eranda Phala, these have different properties. The Eranda Mula and Patra, they are Tikta Rasa and Madhura Rasa, Tikta and Madhura Rasa together, Ushna Virya and Vatahara, Udaharta Priha, etc. Whereas the Eranda Phala is a Guru Swadu Saksharamtya. It's a Swadu Guna and it has a Kshara Guna and it's a Laghu Guna. Eranda Mula and Eranda Patra, they are Guru Guna, and Eranda Phala has a Lagu Guna, Usnam, Bhedi, Vatajita. The Bhedaniya Guna is in the Eranda Phala, whereas in the Eranda Mula, it doesn't have the Bhedaniya Guna. That's the important issue. It's Shulagna, the roots are Shulagna, whereas the fruits are the Bhedaniya. Chanaka has added in Bedaniya Gana, Angamanta Prashamana, and Svedopaka Gana as such. Eranda Yugalam Rushyam Swadu Pitta Sami Rajita, according to again this Nighantu, both the Eranda are Rushya, Swadu, and Pittahara, Vadahara. Hamsapadi is the next of the drug. Ediatum lunulatum, which is now growing around easily. It's available now this season, now in the rainy season. Hamsapadi, Madhushrava, Hamsapadakara Patra, Pita Pushpa, or Jala Dhukta Deshajata, Hamsapai is loke prasitha. It's plenty, seen in plenty in rainy season as such. पर्यायपदात् रक्तपादी अपराप्रोक्ता विषग्रन्थिः त्रिपाद्यपि हंसपादी हंसपदी घृतमण्डलिका च सा. Now it's having Rakta Prasadani, Shita, Dahavi, Sarpanashini, Vrana Provapani, Hamsapadika or Hamsapadika. It's a Vrana Provapana, Rakta Prasadana, Shita Virya, and it's used in Daha Visarpa. Charaka has added in these plant in Kanthya and Madhura Skanda categories. Brusticali is another of the plant. That's Gymnema silvestre. And Brusticali, according to Dalana, Kantakita Mesha Shringi Yugakara Phala, Pathapatra, Isha Drobasha, Shweta Pushpagucha, Dakshina Avarta Balli, Mesha Shringi Vedaha. It's a variety of Mesha Shringi according to Dalana. Now, but commentary, Nigantu has considered this as a synonym of the Mesha Shringi. According to this Nighantu, Ajashringi, Meshashringi, Sarpadamsajabatika, Ditya, Dakshinavarta, Vrishikali, Vishanika. Now, these are the synonyms according to Nighantu. And for as far as the resources are concerned, now we have to depend upon the Nighantu more than the real Samhitas. Now, Guna of Ajashringi is Ajashringi Hima Swaduhu Shopa Trishna Vami Jayat Chakshushya Shwasa Hudroga Vishaka Sarti Kustanata. It's a Shitavirya, Swadurasa, Madhurarasa, and can reduce Shopa Trishna Vamihi. It can reduce vomiting and swelling as well as thirst as such. Chakshusha, Shwasahudroga Vishakasarti Kustanata. In Charaka, it's used in Unmada and Udara, Unmadahara and Udara conditions, Udarahara conditions. The Rishabhi, the 20th is Mukina Purians. Rishabhi is Kapigachuhu, according to Dalana. But comment these Nighantus would be suggesting about the Rishabhi with the different names, and those are Dasi Pushpi to Khatpangi, Khatpa, Paryanka Padika, Rishabhi sa Kakandi, Nyeya, Shukara Padika. Now, Rishabhi in Nighantu is something different. According to Dhalana, the Rishabhi is Kapigachu. Again, it's a controversial issue. And that Kapikachu, which is popularly believed, is the Mukina periods. So there is a issue of controversy. So we will accept the Rishabhi as the Kapikachu Mukina periods as such than what the Nighantu would say. And Charaka also has added this in Balya and Madhuraskanda Gana. So this one Gana, Vidhari Gandhari Gana, we have completed. The next would be Arabudhari Gana, which we will continue in the next session. If there are any questions, we will try to answer and conclude. Right, okay. There are no questions. So, why not? Okay, thank you.